Randy Owen's story does not begin under bright lights or roaring crowds, but in the stillness of Lookout Mountain near Fort Payne, Alabama. He was born into a life shaped by hard labor, modest means, and deep-rooted values. His parents worked the land, teaching him early that dignity came from effort, not possessions. Money was scarce, but integrity was abundant. Randy grew up wearing the same clothes through the week, learning responsibility before comfort. Shyness marked him from childhood, especially when speaking in front of others. Yet music quietly entered his life as a refuge. Inside their wooden home sat a small piano his mother played at church, filling the room with hymns that carried both faith and calm. Those sounds planted something lasting in him. The land, the labor, and the music intertwined, forming a foundation that would never leave him. Long before fame found him, Randy belonged to that soil, and in many ways, he always would. Finding a voice without confidence. Randy's relationship with music was never about attention. In fact, attention unsettled him. Singing felt safer than speaking, and playing guitar gave his hands something to hide behind. School came and went unevenly, and though he briefly dropped out, he returned and graduated, later earning an English degree at Jacksonville State University. Still, confidence never arrived with credentials. What carried him forward instead was persistence. In the late 1960s, when he joined Teddy Gentry and Jeff Cook, the decision felt less like ambition and more like courage. Rehearsals took place in cramped rooms and barns, with no sense of destiny attached. They were simply trying to sound better than yesterday. Randy did not see himself as a frontman. He was uncomfortable stepping forward, uncomfortable being seen. But the music demanded it. Slowly, line by line, harmony by harmony, he learned that fear didn't disappear. It could be carried. That realization became one of the quiet strengths that defined his entire career. The long road through small stages. Before Alabama ever reached radio airwaves, they survived the grind of obscurity. Bars, beach clubs, and endless hours on stage became their classroom. Myrtle Beach tested Randy more than anything before it. Singing for 12 or more hours a day wore his voice raw and his body thin, but it shaped his endurance. Crowds were unpredictable, often uninterested, sometimes unforgiving. Stage fright followed him everywhere, especially when the music stopped and talking began. Randy often stepped back while others spoke, still the shy boy from the mountain. Yet something important happened in those years. He learned how to feel a room, how to hold emotion steady even when exhausted, how to sing not just notes, but meaning. There were no shortcuts, no sudden breaks. What he gained instead was a foundation built on work rather than applause. Those years didn't make him famous, but they made him real. And that authenticity would later become Alabama's signature. Songs that carried home with them. When success finally arrived, it didn't come wrapped in spectacle. It came through simple songs rooted in memory. My Homes in Alabama and Tennessee River were not written to chase trends. They were reflections of Randy's upbringing, shaped by red clay, river mist, and quiet mornings. Listeners heard honesty before they heard polish. Mountain music followed the same path, built from childhood images rather than clever technique. Randy wrote the way he remembered, directly, emotionally, without excess. Those songs resonated because they felt lived in. They didn't present an idealized South. They presented a familiar one. As Alabama's popularity grew, Randy remained surprised by it. Fame felt less like triumph and more like responsibility. He understood that these songs now belonged to others, yet he never detached from where they came from. Every lyric carried a piece of home, and no amount of success ever convinced him to leave it behind. Carrying fame without losing ground, As Alabama became one of the most successful groups in country music history, Randy never fully adjusted to the spotlight. Awards, chart-topping singles, and sold-out arenas arrived faster than he had imagined possible. Yet his posture never changed much. Head slightly down, voice steady, presence humble. He was not chasing recognition, he was trying to honor it. Fame brought exhaustion, long tours, and time away from family, but it never rewrote his values. Fort Payne remained home. June Jam, the charity festival he co-founded, reflected that loyalty. It wasn't about spectacle, it was about giving back to the place that raised him. Even as Alabama entered the Country Music Hall of Fame, Randy spoke not as a legend, but as a son of Alabama soil. The music had traveled far, but his sense of self stayed grounded. Success didn't elevate him above his roots, it deepened them, stepping away without regret. Eventually, the pace became unsustainable. Years of constant touring blurred cities together and drained emotional reserves. Randy realized that stopping wasn't failure, it was survival. When Alabama announced their farewell, the moment felt calm rather than dramatic. There was no collapse, only completion. The farewell tour became a celebration instead of a chase. Each song carried memory rather than pressure. For the first time in decades, Randy felt unhurried. Life after the road opened into stillness. Mornings on the farm, quiet afternoons, space to breathe. Music no longer demanded everything. He returned to it on his own terms, through radio hosting, mentoring, and selective performances. The absence of constant applause didn't feel like loss. It felt like balance. Stepping away allowed him to reclaim the parts of himself that had been stretched thin. The man who once feared the microphone finally learned to rest beside it. Loss, illness, and inner strength. Later years brought challenges unrelated to music. Randy faced prostate cancer quietly, undergoing treatment without public attention. Recovery shifted his perspective, sharpening his gratitude for ordinary days. Not long after, deeper losses arrived. Jeff Cook's passing left a profound absence, not just a bandmate gone, but a brother. Soon after, Randy lost his mother, the woman who first placed music in his life. Those losses reshaped him. Grief softened his presence, deepened his voice, and slowed his rhythm further. Yet he did not retreat from life. He leaned into faith, family, and service. His commitment to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital became deeply personal, rooted in empathy rather than image. Randy learned that strength wasn't found in endurance alone, but in vulnerability. These chapters didn't diminish him. They clarified what truly mattered. Family as the true anchor. Through every rise and fall, Randy's family remained his constant. His wife Kelly stood beside him long before fame arrived, offering stability through decades of touring and uncertainty. At home, Randy was not a performer. He was a husband, a father, a man tending land and listening more than speaking. He made a promise to put his children through college, determined they would never feel the educational loss he once carried. That promise mattered more to him than any award. Home was where the pressure lifted, where the stage ended. The separation between public life and private life was intentional and protected. Family wasn't something fame enhanced. It was something fame had to respect. In that space, Randy found peace. The applause faded, but what remained was far stronger. A legacy built on honesty. Randy. Owen's legacy is not defined by numbers, though they are impressive. It is defined by authenticity. His music never tried to be bigger than life. It tried to be true to it. The songs remain because they reflect shared experience. Work, love, longing, home. He never chased iconship, and in doing so, became one. Today, Randy lives quietly, choosing when to sing and when to simply be. He remains on the land that raised him, walking fields that remind him who he was before the world knew his name. His story is not about conquering fear, but learning to carry it with grace. In the end, Randy Owen didn't become great by leaving himself behind. He became great by holding on.